Well, everybody, I got something in store for you. I got a writer, an educator, a woman that's definitely about her passion and about her life. See, people don't know she's the one that kept me writing when I felt like I shouldn't be writing. She was the one that actually made me cry sometimes a little bit. It was a good cry because I needed to hear, the corrective criticism. I need to hear from my peers, people who have done it, you know, before I have, people who know how the writing process works. And someone is just an inspiration to all women who are looking to get into the educational world and into the literary world. So I'm going to tell you this. I feel like she is a walking MFA, and I feel like she is somebody that you definitely have to follow and someone that you have to understand to fully get a grasp on her. So I am about to give the stage to her, and I'm going to point to her in three, two, one, and it's on you. Please introduce yourself to the Based on Characters podcast family.
Hey, so like Renard said, I'm Ashley N. Roth. I'm a writer. I am an educator. I'm a mother. I am a performer. I do a variety of arts, and I'm interested in always pursuing a variety of arts. Um, I have several short stories out in the world. Um, and I have one children's book, and I have something forthcoming that I can't fully talk about, but there is something happening. And I do a lot of readings around town and just love being immersed in Nashville's awesome literary community.
All right, perfect, perfect. So, if anybody knows me, I get right into certain things that I think fans would be interested in. Now, of course, I follow you on Instagram, and I want you to explain that name,
Oh,
your Instagram handle.
the Beverly Trash.
Yes, I love
Yes.
it.
So actually, it was in high school. We were doing a production of the chorus line, and my friends and I, we could not sing, we could barely dance, and so we all auditioned with our theater group. But we got cast as an ensemble, and we were probably pretty lucky to even have that. But we all were creating our own characters, and so mine was, circa 1970s. She was like fabulous with big hair and big glasses, and her persona was Beverly Trash. And so I created that, in 1999 at Birmingham High School. And
Okay.
it's kind of just stuck with me. And I used to think, oh, maybe it'll be a good name for like a clothing company, or if I ever could form a punk band or something like that. But yeah, that was that persona, Miss Beverly Trash.
Oh, I love it because, it catches you. As soon as you see it, you're like, where was her mind at when she got put that name on there? But it's so fantastic because it's gonna draw anybody in. If they don't know you from a hill of beans, they're definitely gonna remember that name.
Well, in
Trust
Beverly
me.
Trash, it was supposed to be this like juxtaposition of, Beverly Hills. Like she was supposed to be very glamorous, this persona, very glamorous, but she was a little gritty, a little punk rock. you know?
Okay.
So it was this kind of duality there.
All right. So I want to ask you this question here. I've been meaning to ask you about this for a long time. So the writers community in Nashville, how do you feel like you fit in what you have seen and read here in the writers community?
Oh gosh. Let's see I mean, first off, we have such an amazing, vibrant, like huge literary community for people at all levels. There are so many classes, so many groups. And you and I, as you know, met through the Nashville Writers Meetup, which is just one of, 10 different groups that I could think of, instantly. But yeah, Nashville it's one of the reasons I actually moved out here. I had come out, saw Nashville. I was like, oh, this place is cool. And at the time, it was inexpensive. But I remember looking it up and seeing so many writing groups. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. And when I first moved out here, kind of, got involved with Nashville Writers Meetup and then also the Porch. And I feel like writing is it's very solitary. You don't often get to see other people other than characters. And I just love the fact that like then you get together with people and you're talking about your writing and somebody else is like, oh my gosh, I totally get that. And it's led to things like readings and gatherings and going to go, find about a new bookstore. So yeah, we have an amazing literary community. As far as I guess my placement in it is funny because I not too long ago started a Substack, which is in its very new infancy, but I feel like I've been thinking a lot about like, literary citizenship and like what it means. And I feel like there was a time in like 2016, 2017, where I was out there and I was doing things and I was getting asked to be on different readings and I was just doing so many different things that lately I feel like I've not been doing as much. And I think, I mean, being a teacher, like that's very time consuming. Being a parent is very time consuming.
Mm.
But I would really like to be able to say, have a concrete answer and be like, this is my role in the community now. Like I don't lead a writing group anymore. I
Okay.
did another girl, a woman, Lisa Bubert. She was also
Mm.
doing a writing group with me, and now we have our own separate writing group with several other writers. But it doesn't really like belong to anybody. We all take turns hosting. I'm very overdue for my turn to host,
Okay.
but yeah, I feel like I would like to get out there more and do more things. I miss mingling with writers out in the world.
Okay. Okay. Well, here's something I usually do here on the podcast. I kind of go story time, and I just want you to answer this here. Okay. So you
Mhm.
ready?
Yes.
All right. So just imagine a 15-year-old girl. She goes to Hume Fog or somewhere like that. She wants to get into writing. She has an idea for a book, but she sees you and she looks you up online. She says, Beverly Trash, that's interesting. Let me follow her. So she sends you a DM and says, Hey, my name is such and such, and I have this idea for a story, but I need some help getting started. So can you tell the audience what you would tell her on how she can get herself started writing a book?
My gosh. So actually, it's funny because these very scenarios happen, as a teacher, where a kid would be like, I love writing. But it's really hard to get that idea of like, I love writing to actually getting down and doing it and getting kids or anybody, into like the trenches of writing, but not scaring them away because it is a lot of work and it's challenging. But yeah, the first thing I would have them do is say, hey, do you want to do an outline? Do you want to just dive right into it? Writing prompts, joining groups like Southern Word, or
Mm,
getting exposure to some of the Southern Word events. But really just writing. Like that's where, I mean, I feel like, oh my gosh, I mean, I've been writing versions of stories since I was like 5, and I mean, they were not hopefully I've grown.
mm,
But yeah, I think just getting out there and reading a lot. And I think that's the part that is really hard for a lot of writers is like, oh, I have to read to see how it's done, maybe buy a craft book. But I think for a young, like a teenager, just getting the ideas out there and not worrying about revision quite yet. Because
mm.
that would scare off somebody that's young and new to it because they'll be like, oh, this revision kind of is not as fun. It's, the inspiration part, especially when you're young, is the most fun. And then I would give her a Sylvia Plath book because that's what
Oh,
every teenager, especially every teenage girl, needs.
okay, okay. All right. So second scenario here. All right. Let's say it's 6 months now. She took your advice. She got her computer and she starts going at it on Microsoft Word, and she creates a first draft. Then she says, Hey, what should I do with this story that I just wrote here? So, what is her next? What is your advice for her to do next after she finishes the story?
First, she needs to put it away for a while because
Mm,
it's hard to look at it with, with fresh eyes when it's brand new. And this goes for adults too. But then I would try to find her writing community. Does she have friends that are also interested in writing? Oh, I loved
mhm,
having, people in high school that we'd swap our stories with. And then, I mean, I'm always open, obviously, to look at it and to give feedback. But I really think that finding that little like budding writing community, looking for ways to make it stronger. And this is a part too with as a teacher, teenagers I've noticed really struggle with this rough draft to final draft. They know what it means to write a story, they know what it means to write an essay, but now the revision process is such a far off concept. And I remember that. I remember feeling inspired, penning, pages and pages full of poetry, and then being like, oh well, I'm a poet. I've got a book here. I don't need to
mhm.
do anything. Um, and not realizing, no, there's actually a lot more work. I mean, I don't know about you, but some of my novels have 8 drafts more.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, getting her to really and looking at things like scene and looking at, is your story making sense? I mean, you do have to do a full read through. And is it, sometimes it's easier to almost have maybe with that, the initial conversation is having her start with a short story. Because plot is a lot more challenging than people realize. We all can come up with a beautiful sentence with these great premises, but actually following through from beginning to end is really tough.
Okay. Okay. All right. So the third scenario here is she does that. She sees some read through and she has this character. And obviously, I'm plugging the channel based off characters here. But she has this main character and she feels like she's a little dry.
Mhm.
So she wants you to read it. So what do you think you should? I mean, what would you advise her to do after you read one of her drafts and says, "Hey, this is what you probably need to do to make the main character a little more appealing."
Probably, I mean, there are a few things. One thing, you need to write those characters in different scenarios because it helps you get to know them. Because
Mm,
a lot of times, especially if we're trying to write somebody that's really good or really bad, we get kind of flat. We just go with those qualities. One thing I've actually been doing with students, my students at the high school that are in the creative writing club, is we've been putting our characters into new scenes and at random. Sometimes we'll write different scenarios on a piece of paper and draw them out at random, and so it would be something like if you've got like some wizard and then all of a sudden his like money is lost at the bank, and so it'd be
hmm
something totally off, but it does help you get to know your character. Maybe writing backstory. And this is the hardest part for any writer, to write backstory that you might not use. I mean, that's
hmm
writing backstory just to get to know your characters. And then just really making sure like what does your character want all the time. I actually did, it's funny 'cause I'm in my writing space, but for the last novel, I have this whole like scribble scrabble piece of paper that's like, what does every character want? And sometimes I was like, oh, I didn't know what some of those characters wanted. Um, and it was showing in the scenes where they had beautiful descriptions and maybe they did cool things and they thought interesting things, but their motivation wasn't clear. And so that think that's what makes a character feel really alive, is when you're like, oh my gosh, I know what they want, I get it, I can feel it, I'm in this scenario. So yeah, those will be my suggestions.
Okay. All right. All right. But here's my next scenario. She comes to you maybe like a few months down the road. She takes your advice. She does everything that she feels like she needs to do. But she says, you know what? I want to read one of Ashley Roth's stories. And so she asks you, can you give me one of your polished short stories so I can read over the weekend? If so, what would that story be? And what would that story, don't tell us the whole thing, but a little bit of the story that you will give her.
Gosh, especially if she's looking for character. I mean, the short story that I'm probably the most proud of is a story called Adolescent, but it's a lot of clipped vignettes. It's teen girls in the
Mm,
90s, but it's very much impressions. It's a flashback, but it's more impressions of things as opposed to like strong character development. Um, for character development, the stories I'm probably the most proud of, oh gosh, well, there'd probably be three that I feel like would be almost tied, but there was one that was famous, is the name of it,
mm,
and it is also a teenage girl, and I feel like that character development is probably the strongest. And then recently, I had a story called "I'm So Glad You're Here," and that one I feel like had a lot of characterization, a lot more inside of a character's head, and seeing how they interacted with other people. But that the premise of that one, it's a woman's at a baby shower with her former best friend, but she should not be at a baby shower. It's not the most healthiest choice for her considering what she's gone through. And so that's a really interesting story. And then the other one, the famous, where it's a teen girl and her parents are rock and roll parents, but they're a little negligent, and so she finds ways to occupy herself. That's those two.
okay. All right. So I got one for you. All
Mhm.
right. Just imagine this. You've got a empty house. You probably haven't had an empty house in a while
I know, what is
because I
that?
know you got your little girl and everything.
Mhm.
But just imagine you did. And you said, I'm going to knock out a short story, maybe overnight, flash fiction or whatever. But you also hungry. So you're going to go get something to eat, bring it back to the house, and then you're going to eat maybe while you write. So what will be your go-to food, and what will be your approach to start on your first line? So first line and food.
Okay, first line food. That's tough. So now my most favorite foods probably wouldn't be my go-to writing food though, because my most favorite foods would be things that are a little bit more like oh my gosh, like Southern View, their beautiful biscuit sandwiches, but then that'd be heavy and that'd be hard to write. Um
Hmm.
a lot of times, honestly, my go-to writing food is like the most boring. It's like oatmeal or something. But maybe I
Mm,
would go run to a coffee shop, get like a bagel or get somebody else to make the oatmeal. Maybe go get even like a smoothie. Um, and let's see, where would I, a smoothie with some green powder. I would have to have things that are very light and easily digestible. You see, I thought about this actually.
hmm.
This is real life. Sometimes after running, I'm like, oh, I gotta go for a run, but I can't eat too much or I'll go to sleep. And
Hmm.
as for first line, I actually usually that's the time when I find that I really need to write. It doesn't always
Hmm.
coincide with an empty house, of course, but I usually will, like, a line will kind of start rolling around in my head and I can't get that line out of my head. And I'm like, this is it. So um what I might do in that scenario where I have happen to have this beautiful day of an empty house, I might go look in my notes on my phone and see which of those lines I've been rolling in my head that I've written down. But usually those lines become so pressing that at some point, even if your house is full, you are like, hold on, let me just get one paragraph down so I don't forget.
Okay, cool, cool. All right, so I got another scenario for you.
Yes.
You're out and about and you're going to, I don't know if you go to thrift shops or
Oh,
any places like that. You do.
mhm.
Have you ever met somebody or seen somebody? You didn't talk to them, but you said that would be an interesting character to write about. It's something about just it just drew me in. All right, can you name the time that happened to you?
Oh gosh, I know it's happened. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a specific moment because I know it's happened. I mean, even the grocery store, sometimes there'll be an interaction between two people. And you overhear like a piece of a conversation. But again, I'm blanking on specific. Um, Sometimes they'll even be, obviously we have our own people close to us that something they'll say will spark something. Um, there was, because I have a story actually, and I'm trying to remember who sparked it, but it's called Next of Kin, and it's a mom at a morgue, and she's identifying her child. But there was
Mm,
something that I saw out in the world, and he's an adult child, but it was something to do with Care Bears, is what actually sparked it, which seems
mm,
completely opposite of what that story is
okay.
about. Um, but it was something. I don't even know if it was a person. It might have been a Care Bear like product, like at like there's a place, Robinson or Robertson's Flea Market, that we used to go to more frequently, and they'll have like a lot of toys and stuff from like the 80s. And so that not only sparks like my nostalgia for my own childhood, but also seems to make a lot of stuff brew. But I cannot think of a specific, but it happens all the time.
Okay, okay, no problem, no problem. All right, you've been in New Orleans. Actually, all right, I guess tell the fans where you actually where you from.
Oh gosh, that's almost kind of a loaded, very complicated question.
Yeah, yeah,
So I was born in Portland, Oregon, and then I moved
okay.
to Cal. I mean, I was raised all over the West Coast, but I've lived in so many different cities. I went to probably close to like 12 different schools. I went to four different high schools in two different
Mm,
states in like no, four different cities.
okay,
So yeah, so I very but most of my life was spent between Portland, Oregon, and Los Angeles, California.
okay. The reason why I asked you a question, I remember you. I think you said something about New Orleans, or mentioned it, or did you write about it? Please tell me I'm not dreaming that, and you did.
You're
Write.
totally. It's real. Yeah, actually, my first fully finished novel was set in New Orleans and Hollywood, and it was in the 1920s. And I've actually been thinking lately about going back to it. It was one that took me, oh gosh, like almost 10 years to get a full draft out of. Because I started it when I actually technically started when I was 14, a version of it, and then it got put away and came back. But it took so long, and then by the time you're going back to revisions, like I've grown as a writer, the characters are all over the place. But I've thought about going back and seeing that story because New Orleans, actually, my mom had lived in New Orleans off and on a couple of times. So I would go there a lot. And then when I was 12, I was there for a month. But
Okay.
it's always been like, it is like, of all the cities in the United States, like it is the most like alive city, and like it's the one that you like, it has its own smell, its own personality. Like, I mean, every city does to some extent, but something about
Hmm.
and then I love old Hollywood, and so it's that the two, like between going from like New Orleans 1920s where there's a lot of like Storyville and all the different like history going on there, going then to Hollywood and it's like brand newness and all its history. Yeah, so you did not dream it. And yeah, the teen girl and the movie contest. Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'm just trying to make sure because I don't want to put a story out there that's not true. I try not to do that. But that leads into my next thing. Can you tell me a little bit about a story that you're wanting to write but haven't written yet or haven't started yet?
Hmm. I actually did just start thinking about one. I think I do have like a paragraph down, but it's one of those days I just kind of left it. Where a mother and daughter take a road trip, and the daughter doesn't know like her paternal lineage, and she wants to know it, but it's a very like ugly thing for the mom. And so she wants to go on a road trip because the daughter's like, "Oh, I've turned 18 now. My mom can tell me everything." Um, and that's like, but the mom is like, let me show you all the most innocuous things so I don't have to answer heavy questions. That one is
Mhm.
kind of one that's brewing. And then this other one that just started kind of doing a little dance. And I'm wrapping up novel number 3, well, the first draft
Mm.
of it. So it's the other little novel of a failed 90s like star, and like kind of them coming back into the limelight. But I'm trying to think of what would be the inciting incident. Like I started, so all these different things of these old celebrities kind of re-emerging, and like what does that mean, and what does celebrity mean, and how like the whole idea of celebrity can kind of like throw you aside when they don't need you anymore. So I was trying to think of,
Mm.
is this like a 90s, like maybe she was in like a teen 90s movie, or like she was like a Britney Spears or something like that, but she's coming back, and I'm thinking like a crime of some sort. Because I really started, I've been obsessed with true crime for so long, but I've never written like that kind of stuff. And the thing I'm working
Mhm.
on right now has a little thriller-esque. It's tied to like an infamous serial killer and things. So I'm like, now I'm getting in this thriller world.
Okay. I can't wait for that. I mean, I feel like your wordplay, how you're able to manipulate, and this goes back years. I can only imagine how good you are now.
No.
I'm. This is true, but I just your lingo and how you able to put that with a story. I think that the world needs to know about that. So there's got to be something that you will want to go out to the world that you already written. And if that's the case, which story? It can be a short, it can be a flash, it can be a poem, it can be a novel. What would you want the world to be able to read from you?
So something that like I have that I haven't submitted.
That you have is
Okay,
it's
so
on your flash drive or wherever, notebook or
yeah.
whatever. Mhm.
I actually do have one that I've done a couple of drafts of, and it's a tough one because it's inspired by so many things from childhood to real life, and then of course most of it's made up, but there are little tendrils of like truth to it that you just want to get right, and it's and that one I'm hoping to like do one more revision and get it submitted. But this one is a girl in like the mid 2010s, which I can't believe I'm referring to that like it's history.
Mhm.
But maybe, or late like 2008, 2009, and she's perusing social media, and it's not even what it is today, but she's perusing social media and finds out that the man that had been kind of her father figure has passed away, and she hasn't seen him
Okay.
since she was like 8 years old. But kind of the questions that she asked her mom. There's a weird theme I'm sensing already. I've got these weird things with moms and daughters and
Okay.
fathers type stuff. Oh, there must be some Freudian thing here. But yeah, she finds out he's dead, and she had a really hard time connecting with her mom, and she's trying to maybe connect with her, but it's but there's more to it. So yeah, that's one I hope I can get out soon.
All right, nice, nice. All right, tell me a book that you would rewrite if you had the chance. Not one of yours,
Oh, a
just
book
one.
that, oh,
Yeah.
oh gosh. Um, Let me think, because I feel like there have been some books recently that I was kind of like, hmm. Well, you know what I would like, and this is not because of a rewrite because it's bad, but because I feel like it could use a fresh retelling. So
Okay.
Wuthering Heights was one of my like I mean I primarily read contemporary literature now and
Hmm.
contemporary books, but in high school when I was like, I am such a lofty writer, I only read things that are old, and so Wuthering Heights was one of my favorites since I was like 13, and I actually would like to reread Wuthering Heights relatively recently in the near future because I feel like there's a lot that I didn't even understand the many times I read it, as a teenager, early 20s. But I'd like to rewrite Wuthering Heights almost from like a YA perspective and maybe set
Mm,
in the 80s. So I've considered, there's one podcast I listen to called The Shit No One Tells You About Writing. And
okay.
and they talk a lot, and it's one of my most favorite writing podcasts. You should totally check it out. But
All right.
they talk a lot. I'll hear people send in their queries, and I've heard some queries of like retellings. I'm like, man, Wuthering Heights would be kind of a cool thing, especially because everybody's like, oh my gosh, Heathcliff, but like he's kind of, from what I remember, he's kind of terrible. But we're also, it's like that
Mhm.
initial bad boy that the girls were like, oh, he's awful, we love him, and like he retelling that and maybe not painting him as this perfect tortured hero, or if he is a perfect tortured hero, maybe Catherine does something more fabulous and doesn't just get resigned to all that, and maybe cut out the death and all that.
Right, right. Okay. That's interesting. You kind of answered my next one. I was going to say, give some podcast recommendations beside the one you just gave that you think a writer would get something out of.
Yeah, so there's that one. There is this one called like Lit Match that interviews agents. That one's really cool. And there's
Hmm.
also a DIY MFA. It's funny because you said you gave me that super sweet compliment saying I was a walking MFA. That one's really cool too. But yes, I think those are. I have a whole slew of writer ones, but it's funny 'cause I kind of like go between my writer podcast, my true crime podcast, and then I was listening to this old Hollywood. But sometimes hearing things that aren't like writer focused is actually really helpful because you hear stories, told through the podcast medium, but you're hearing stories that maybe give you inspiration, but without the technicality of being like, and now you need to make sure your characters are doing this or your plot's doing this. But I do love, yeah, I love the one I was telling you about because I just love they interview agents, they always interview a writer. And it's been the most helpful out of all the podcasts so far.
Okay, perfect. All right. Question for you about a person that you would love to meet. It doesn't have to be writing, living or dead. What is somebody that you would love to have a sit down and have maybe tea or coffee with?
Oh my gosh. And I say it doesn't have to be. Well, there are two. So I guess I mentioned Sylvia Plath. And I know it's like, I mean, in some ways she's become such like almost like unreal and so tied to like her trauma, her mental illness. But she's somebody that, I mean, because she touched me in a different way when I was a teenager, and then once I had my daughter, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, how is it, the way she wrote about motherhood was so poignant and so touching. And then given how she ended her life, I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I reconcile like all those things? And sometimes like motherhood's complicated, humanhood is complicated. So I'd
Hmm.
love to sit and talk to her about all the things. And then Clara Bow was kind of my inspiration for this book that you remember, that the novel I've been working on.
Hmm.
In some ways, like she's my favorite silent film actress, and I would love to sit with her and talk to her also how she reconciled her true self with like the machine of Hollywood. Two people who have like always been so fascinating to me. But yeah, I would love that. Would just be the dream conversation. Actually, if all three of us could sit and talk, that would be amazing.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Well, let me get into a couple of rapid fire questions. I want the first thing that comes to your head when I tell you this. So here we go. Favorite band?
uh, Duran Duran. That's not even my truth.
Duran Duran. That's a oh okay.
Well,
No,
it's
they're
funny. I was actually thinking Depeche Mode, and for some reason, I mean, I love Duran Duran, but that's not. Ooh, I enjoy. Yeah, but you said rapid fire. I'm just giving. That's the first thing that popped in my
okay. No, no problem, no problem. Smoothie or tea?
smoothie.
All right. Favorite book if you was on an island that you would want to read?
Beautiful ruins.
Okay. Hmm. Van or truck?
Van.
Van. Okay. All right. Now this is going to be interesting because this has to do with writing. Okay.
Oh,
All right. If you could steal a author for a day, who would it be?
Lauren Groff.
Lauren Groff.
Yeah.
I know that name. I just oh I feel like I read something about her. Can you tell me before I get back into that? Can you tell me about her?
Yeah, so Fates and Furies was the first Lauren Groff that I read, and how you had talked, about wordplay. Oh my gosh, her use of language is exquisite. Even like, Matrix was one of her books. I did not love it as much as Fates and Furies, but just everything, like just the language is like it's lyrical, it's poetic, it's like palpable. But I love hearing the way that she also talks about writing. And she had a book that just came out this last year too that is on my to read list. And all of her, I mean, her Arcadia, like she has all these amazing books that she wrote before too. But the way she talks about the writing process is so interesting. So what she does is she writes everything like longhand on like some big piece of paper, and then she stores it away and then starts from scratch. Can you imagine every like
Mm,
book, like you start every draft, like you don't even look at the, oh no, I would, I do not have enough hours, but I'd love to like sit with her and talk about that and be like, what is a truncated version of that I can do with my schedule?
wow, that's interesting. That's interesting because I saw a guy. I was looking on one of the ABC interviews, and he was an author, and I think he just won the Pulitzer.
Oh,
And I can't think of the book now because I haven't read it, but he uses the whole page when he writes freehand. He
wow.
uses the whole page, so he doesn't worry about the lines. He just writes.
Wow.
So I thought that was pretty cool. It's kind of quirky, but
I can't even do longhand anymore. I mean, my handwriting's so bad. And that's actually one of the things Lauren Groff and Rebecca Mackay, whom I also love, but they were saying or Lauren Groff's like, I can't even read my own handwriting. That's part of the magic. And I'm like, no, I mean, I would just feel frustrated. And be like, was that a good line? I'll never know. I'm left-handed, so I hold my pen kind of weird. And like, yeah,
mhm.
I could not imagine doing all that.
Okay. I'm gonna ask you this here:
Yes.
laptop or typewriter?
A laptop, even though I do love a decorative typewriter.
Do you own one?
I
You
do
you own
actually.
one?
It's funny. Yeah, is that, yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Because I was looking at my parents' house, and I found my sister's old word processor,
Oh my gosh.
and I was like trying to find like the ribbon for that is like crazy. I had to go on Amazon to get it, but it still works. It's
And
crazy.
it would be a very tactile way. I've thought, and I got this from like an estate sale, and I tried to type on it, but it's so old. Same thing. It needs a ribbon. It's kind of a work in progress. But in high school, I had a teacher who said my handwriting was so bad that she wanted me to type, and like computers existed, but they weren't like, the ubiquitous thing that they are now. And so my grandparents had a word processor that I was using. So here I am typing my school stuff on this word processor. Everybody else gets to handwrite their stuff.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna get back in the rapid
Yeah.
fire here. All right. So ooh, I just lost it. All right. Here we go. All right. If you can you oh, I just lost it again. Give me a second. Okay, got it. All right. So you rather write inside or outside?
Inside.
Inside. Okay. Uh, favorite place to write in the house?
My little writing space, my upstairs.
Okay. Do you like warm weather or cold weather?
Warm. I know I was not rapid fire.
Is your daughter's real well read? Is your daughter
Yes, sometimes I feel like I'm always trying to push the stuff. But yeah, she reads a lot. Yeah, but it seems like I'm always trying to be like, let's read even more. And
Okay.
like she told me, she said, "Mommy, I'm not like you. I like to have adventures." I was like, reading books is an adventure.
Okay. Nice, nice. Would you rather walk or ride a bike?
Walk.
Okay. Would you rather sing or dance?
Hmm. Dance.
Okay, okay. Um, would you rather be an astronaut or be a deep sea diver?
Ooh, and they're both kind of terrifying. I think the
Yeah.
deep sea diver, but they're both so scary. There's the deep ocean and space just like blow my mind. They're too vast and open.
Okay, okay. Last time you've been on an airplane?
Last summer.
All right. Have you ever been on a train?
Yes.
All right. Have you ever hiked a mountain?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever wrote a story you regret?
Maybe not full stories, but pieces of them, maybe. But they've
Mm,
never got made it out to the world. So I don't really regret them too much because they only live in my bubble.
okay. All right. Have you ever wrote about a friend?
Not exactly verbatim, but friends have inspired things maybe.
Okay. Favorite villain from a book?
Ooh. Ooh, that is tough. Um, man, that is tough. It's been so long since I've read something. Oh, I've had, well, I mean, recently I read Bright Young Women, which was amazing, and Ted Bundy's in that book.
Oh, Ted
I
Bundy.
mean, he's a villain, right?
He is. He's definitely a villain.
Yes. Was that terrible? It'd be like, that's my favorite villain because the book was not, we weren't celebrating. It was like the first book or thing not to celebrate him.
No, no, it's all right. Good. Well, the next question: favorite hero from a book?
Um, hmm, hmm. Favorite hero from a book. Oh my gosh. I'm even trying to think of like picture books and stuff. Like, um, oh man.
Hmm.
Let me think of the last thing that I read that. See, I feel like I haven't read anything that has like a heroic character in so long that I am stumped. Like everything I read, like my own books, everybody's so like, everybody's got a bad layer to them. That
Well,
like, yeah, here and or there's I'm trying to even think of a
I can tell you mine while you're thinking of
yeah,
yours. I the Hannibal, the guy from Silence of the Lambs.
ah as a
Yeah.
hero.
No,
Ah!
absolutely not. No, absolutely not. I can't get his face out of my head. And the book is definitely better than the movie. And it was just so well written. And I
I've
was
heard
like,
things about that book. Yeah, I it's been like right now it's like gosh, what are we I'm actually the book I'm reading right now I don't love it and it's been taking forever to read.
mm,
Um but yeah, I feel like every like the last book I read before that I have some questions for you from Rebecca Makkai. I loved it, but I don't know if I would say that that character is particularly heroic. Um yeah, I feel trying to even think of like a vigilante type thing, or even like the books we read with the students. Yeah, from I'm thinking fictional. Like I can definitely think of some like nonfiction fabulous heroic people.
mhm.
But I'm stumped. I don't I have no heroes.
Nah, it's all right. It's all right. Because, I mean, it's kind of hard to think about because you read so much. And
Yeah,
I'm sitting there like, if someone asks me that question, I have to already have it in my head because I read so many things. I'm like, oh, I just cannot get it out. I know it's in me. I just
yeah.
can't, produce it right now.
It'll come to me
But
later, and I'll send you a message and be like, edit it.
yeah, please do. Please do.
Yeah.
All right. So, are you ready for this? This is going to be kind of my last question.
Okay.
Do you have a line there? Because I know your WordPress is awesome. Do you have a line that you can remember or you can read right now for the audience of something that you've written? Maybe
Hmm.
a couple lines, if you
Oh,
can.
well, it's funny. Let me actually. I have works in progress. Nope, that's not it.
Oh,
Nope, that's not it either. Well, goodness gracious, I
I
am.
actually walked Rolf reading. I would love this. I just want to hear a couple things, just
Yes. Um.
if you got it.
Yeah, and everything else is downstairs. But let me think. Um. If I have anything memorized. Um. Well, I had the one that silver was the wrong color. That's
Oh,
actually an opening line to something
okay,
that you will be able to actually hold in your hand within a somewhat near future. And it
okay,
won't just
okay.
be online in a short story form. It will be, in a you can take it with you form.
Wow. Okay. Well, I was gonna. I guess. Can you give the audience a plug for like maybe your like a elevator pitch for one of your books?
Yes. So, well, I'll tell you the one that I'm working on right now. Maybe somebody will hear it and say we need that book. So I'm working on right now is, oh gosh, elevator pitch, and it's still in progress. So, um, in 1985, two teenage girls were the latest victims of the Green River Killer. Nearly 40 years later, their mothers have received a revelation that changes everything they knew. That was
Hmm.
terrible. That was not prepared, but it's
No.
yeah, it's something along those, or a letter arrives that changes everything. Two women, former best friends, ever knew about the crime that changed their life.
Wow. Wow. I like it. I like it. Well, I got something I want to tell you. I
Yes.
got a story called "Last Chance to Celebrate," and it's about um, a young man that becomes engaged in Florida. So they're at a house, which is one of those swanky type of coastal houses. And he's already popped the question. They're living up, they're planning their life, and they're celebrating themselves. But one day when they're eating breakfast, his future wife says, "Got to tell you something." He
Yeah.
says, "What?" He says, uh, "Somebody has to die." And he asks, "Why?" She said, "I can't give you the details yet, but just let you know he has to go." So that's the premise of the story, and
It's
it
finished.
kind of it's almost finished. I'm
Oh,
in
yes.
well, it's
Then
finished. I'm in rewrite of my second draft right now, and some of my friends is like, "Hey man, I gotta know more about that because it
yeah,
kind of goes into his life and her life, how they come together, and the secret that she holds. I mean, she pops a big question on him,
yeah.
and he needs to know what he needs to do with this information. And the funny thing about this story here is she's actually pregnant when she says this.
Oh, well, okay. So,
That's all I can give you.
can you send it to me?
I could. I'll send it to you when I feel comfortable. I
Yeah.
will send it to you. Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
love to. Yeah. I'd love to see, yeah, because it's been a while since we've seen each other's work. I'd love to read something of yours and see, because yeah, it's been years. It's been years since I've
Yeah.
gotten the chance to.
It definitely has been years. I know that. I guess sometimes I think about what COVID did to the writers group, but also what you know me kind of I kind of shut it down for a little bit,
Yeah.
but I still had ideas. I still had certain things going on, but I kind of got into life and career and things like that. But I always had like stories. I feel like the one thing about me is stories, ideas come. It's just trying to finish the product.
Yeah.
So yeah, so for you and your people, my last question is, what do you think is in store for you in your writing career now? Yeah, going forward.
Well, like I said, there's some news that I know of that I can't. I don't know if I can say it yet. So like that's where I guess I should have checked before. Um, but yeah, like I mean, there's of course the Fantasyland version of where you know book deals and book deal after book deal after book deal. But I do feel like it's they've hit a place where things like I did have a stretch of time where things were getting published more frequently in smaller journals, and maybe that's not happening, but as frequently. I did have a short story come out in January.
Okay.
Um, I did a reading last year for a benefit. So I still have things going on. And I think now it's more like the longevity versus like, sometimes that means you don't have anything published for a couple of years because you're working on a novel. And maybe that means like getting to see my work in like bookstores. And that may or may not mean, the big lofty six-figure book deals. But I realized actually, I was telling somebody at work the other day, I was like, I don't even know if I would ever like leave my day job. Like I don't even know if I even care about it being like to that extent. I just like I love writing. It's really cool if other people can read it and enjoy it. But I don't need to, be a millionaire with it. And that kind of
Right.
almost feel like from what I hear people talk about the business side of it, sometimes that can like dilute like what you love to do because then you're so worried about the business part. Like, yes, of course, like it would be awesome to be in, Reese's book club or something like that. But I think just getting out there and having people actually like carry a book that you wrote is that I hope to do a lot more of that.
Okay, okay. I understand that. I think about one of my favorite authors, Jasmine Ward.
Yes, I love her.
She's won like two national book awards, but she still teaches at Tulane. I thought
Yeah,
that was like, you thought you hit the big time, and then, but I guess she just wants to be an educator and
yeah.
still write, when she writes. So it's very inspiring there. And I kind of, you got a little flair like her as well. And I also think you're like, I think you're actually better than Donna Tartt. I've been saying
Oh
that.
my, that is. I don't believe it, but
I think you really, I mean, you're really a wonderful writer. I mean,
thank you.
the world should know about you. But Um, well, I'm gonna say this here. I kept you a lot longer than I thought
That's
because
okay.
but you're a really cool person, and
Thank you.
everybody should get to know you and what you got going on. And tell your daughter I say hello and all your family and everything. Tell them I say hello. I see them on Instagram, and that's what I want you to do next. Please shout out, where people can follow you online and where they can possibly find some of your great writing.
Oh my gosh. So I did the Beverly Trash, which is my all the time Instagram. I do have a writer one that I've been trying to be more on top of, and that's at Ashley N. Roth. And then there is a website at www.ashleynroth.com, and you can do all of my stories that are already out there and any that are coming in the future too.
Perfect. Okay. I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, Ashley, for doing this here.
Thank
Hopefully, we can get together again and definitely talk. I can sit there and talk books and stories with you all
uh,
day. You're a wonderful person. But
thank you.
again, thank you so much for joining the Based on Characters podcast. And as I tell the people and the readers and the followers here, make sure that you keep your mind on your prize. That's your goals and where you want to go to the future. There's no telling what's in store for you. Again, thank you, Ashley, for joining us. And until I speak to you all again, peace, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.